In these documents, though, General, there are connections between Al Qaeda and Iran.
Absolutely.
Deep connections?
Yeah, I mean, if they're allowing a guy to conduct, to enable command and control of Iraq, of Al Qaeda in Iraq, on behalf of Al Qaeda senior leaders, yeah, I mean, I would say that that's a fair description.
And that is General Mike Flynn explaining the connection between Iraq and Al Qaeda with Brett Baerback, between Iran and Al Qaeda. With Brett Baerback in March. Steve Hayes has been going over all these new documents from the Osama bin Laden raid and has more proof of that connection. Steve Hayes, senior writer, Weekly Center. How are you, Steve? And good morning to you.
Morning, Bill. How are
you? I'm fine, thank you. So let's just back up a little bit here. There were about 100 documents from the bin Laden compound that were made public yesterday, of which there are more than 1 million that still are not public. You have seen some additional documentation that's not public, that goes to this Iranian connection, and what did you learn?
Yeah, in my interviews with a variety of sources who are familiar with the material, there is evidence that the Iranian regime actually played a hand in helping Al Qaeda with attacks against U.S. interests, which takes this sort of beyond just the level of them having a relationship, which we've known for quite a while. The Obama administration has designated Iranian officials and Al Qaeda leaders because of this relationship between Iran and Al Qaeda. But what I've learned is that there are actual documents in the cache that have not yet been released that point to Iranian involvement in attacks against U.S. interests.
Okay, now U.S. interests, is that U.S. forces fighting in Iraq at the time? What would that be more specifically?
U.S. interests more broadly. It's not just U.S. forces fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've known for quite a long time that the Iranians were providing EFPs to the terrorists fighting our forces in country. No, this is U.S. interests much more broadly.
Why would Iran protect Al Qaeda?
It's not so much that Iran would protect Al Qaeda. I mean, I think the best way to look at this relationship is an off-again, on-again relationship involving mutual exploitation at times when they had shared interests. If you look at their common enemy, the United States, you look at the eagerness to hurt the United States in whatever way possible, there was some accommodation there. And again, I think it's very important to point out that this is a relationship that the Obama administration has highlighted at various times. The Obama administration designations in 2011 and 2012, some of which were based on, at least to some extent, on captured documents, point to what was described to me at the time as a core pipeline of fighters, Al Qaeda fighters in Iran that went on to work with Al Qaeda senior leadership in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Now, if all this plays out the way you're reporting it, what's the context of the Iranian nuclear negotiations then?
Well, I mean, I think this is highly relevant to the Iranian nuclear negotiation. I think this is one of the things that's frustrating to intelligence officials who know about this information is here we're having a big debate, a national debate about the Iranian nuclear program, about the nature of the regime in Iran, and we're not seeing information that the U.S. government has about what Iran was up to with respect to Al Qaeda and attacks on U.S. interests. I think it's important that people see this, and instead what we're seeing in this little drip of information that the administration has put out is a highly cleansed version of the documents, and in fact some documents that suggest tension between Iran and Al Qaeda, between Sunni and Shia. Tension which existed, to be sure, but we're only getting part of the story.
Today. And part of that story, here is more of General Flynn with Brett 2.5 months ago on the number of documents. Listen.
We've been told there are between 1 million and 1.5 million documents that were collected at the UBL compound in Abbottabad. Is that roughly true?
That's fair.
So that preliminary scrub lasts about 3 months?
Yeah, about 3 months, probably into about June or so.
And then, according to reporting in the Wall Street Journal, the documents went unexploited for a long stretch of time.
Yeah, for probably, I would say some number of months. It could have been as much as a year.
I mean, 1.5 million documents. I mean, that just blows your mind.
Yeah.
But you allege that the White House is playing games with the release. Back that up if you can.
Well, look, I mean, on the White House website, on the DNI website that announces this latest batch of documents, it says it's being done in coordination under the auspices of the White House. I don't think the White House necessarily needs to have a role in this if this is an intelligence community project. But I think Flynn said a couple of very important, and I would argue explosive things. One, the sheer number of documents, over 1 million documents. We can agree over 1 million documents. The U.S. public has seen roughly 120 of those right now. Why is it that we've only seen 120? And of the documents that were released yesterday, you have, Osama bin Laden's reading list, but in talking to intelligence officials that I know, they say the most important things about that reading list was not the books that he was reading, but what he wrote in the margins, how he highlighted the information in the books, notes that he took about what he was reading, which give us great insight into what he was thinking, how he was receiving this information, and what he had planned to do. And then last point, the second thing that Flynn said that I think that was so explosive there is that the document collection, when untouched by his account for a year, can you imagine having this amount of information about the leader of Al Qaeda, somebody that we've been hunting for a decade, and have it go untouched in the U.S. intelligence community for a year?
It's a fascinating
point. That is extraordinary.
You bet. Don't mean to cut you off, but we're out of time, but more to come throughout the day. Thank you, Steve Hayes.